Peter are considered to be the apostolic fathers of the church in Rome. Paul is usually depicted with a sword and scrolls, Peter holding the keys to the kingdom. The Bible speaks clearly about Paul's visits to Rome, but very little about Peter. One bit of evidence comes from Peter's first epistle. He mentions Rome at the end of the letter, but he says it cryptically. He writes, "She who is in Babylon, chosen together with you, sends you her greetings, and so does my son Mark." It was common in ancient Jewish writings to find Rome designated as Babylon. For the most part, we have to rely on two other authorities to make the case for Peter in Rome. First, early church historians and writers acknowledge Peter's presence in Rome and the region. Dionysius of Corinth wrote, "Peter and Paul at Rome and at Corinth, for both of them alike planted in our Corinth and taught us, and both alike teaching similarly in Italy, suffered martyrdom and at the same time." Clement of Rome in AD 97 wrote that Peter and Paul were martyred together at Rome. Tertullian, writing around AD 200, said Peter's death took place during the Christian persecutions by Nero. The final voice that supports Peter in Rome is Catholic tradition. The Catholic Church maintains that Peter went to Rome after the Council of Jerusalem in AD 49. There he served as the bishop of the small Christian community. Peter's epistles are traditionally held to have been written during his time as Bishop of Rome. This letter is addressed to various churches in Asia Minor suffering religious persecution. Peter writes in 1 Peter 1, 6 and 7, "In all this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed." In 64 or 65 AD, the Emperor Nero set fire to Rome so that he could build his new palace. Needing a scapegoat, he blamed the Christians, as recorded by Tacitus. A horrific persecution broke out against the Christians, and many were martyred by Nero. St. Peter was arrested and condemned to death. It's quite possible that, like Paul, he was imprisoned in the infamous Mamertine prison. Legend states that Peter caused a spring to flow in the prison, and many were healed by it. Peter was crucified on Vatican Hill in the Circus of Caligula, also known as Circus Nero. The site served ancient Rome as a chariot racecourse, but one day this place of martyrdom would become the center of the Catholic faith. The Egyptian obelisk that stands in the center of St. Peter's Square today marked the center of the racecourse. It was moved a few hundred feet from its original position. Eusebius, a 4th century church historian, wrote that St. Peter came to Rome and was crucified with his head downwards. Tradition holds that St. Peter protested that he was not worthy to die as the Lord, and so was crucified upside down. Eusebius also wrote that Peter's grave was in the Vatican. After his death, the faithful recovered St. Peter's body. They buried it in an acropolis, or city of the dead, that was northwest of the circus, and presently at the site of St. Peter's Basilica. The early church secretly venerated his grave and protected it from pagan desecration. Pope Anicetus built a memorial over the site in the 2nd century to mark the grave. In 330, Emperor Constantine began building a huge basilica at the grave site to honor the first Pope Peter. In order to lay a foundation, the builders had to level the land, and so they filled in the necropolis. They purposely positioned the altar over the burial site of St. Peter. And in 1506, when construction began on a new basilica, the high altar remained over the burial site. In the 20th century, in February of 1939, workers uncovered the buried necropolis, finding both pagan and Christian mausoleums. By 1950, archaeologists concluded that they found the grave of St. Peter. Greek graffiti on an adjacent wall to the original memorial marked the spot Petros Ine, or Peter is within. Other graffiti asked Peter to pray to Christ for deceased people. On the walls were common Christian symbols like Alpha and Omega or the Chi and Rho. They also found bones in a secret marble repository in the graffiti wall. These bones had been wrapped in a purple fabric with gold threads dating back to ancient Rome. Anthropologists concluded the bones belonged to a man between 60 and 70 years of age, about 5 feet 7 inches tall and of robust constitution, a fitting description of the fisherman St. Peter. The Catholic Church recognizes these bones as the remains of the Apostle Peter and considers him to be their first pope. St. Peter's Basilica is still the central focus of the Church today. Providing a stately approach to the great church is the huge elliptical St. Peter's Square, designed by Bernini and built between 656 and 667. It is surrounded by what is known as Bernini's colonnade. St. Peter's is the most renowned work of Renaissance architecture and one of the largest churches in the world. But it is not the mother church of the Catholic Church, nor is it the cathedral of the Diocese of Rome. But St. Peter's is still regarded as one of the holiest Catholic shrines in the world. It has been described as holding a unique position in the Christian world and as the greatest of all churches in Christendom. The oldest and most important church of the Catholic faith, however, is St. John's Lateran. This church houses the Cathedra of the Roman Pontiff. St. John's has the title of Ecumenical Mother Church of the Roman Catholic Faithful. Its cathedral was dedicated first to the Savior on November 9, 318. It was embellished with beautiful decorations given by Constantine, including 7 silver altars and 7 gilded candlesticks inlaid with images of prophets. The central bronze doors are Roman originals from the Curia in the ancient Imperial Forum, or Senate House. The distinguishing feature of St. John's is the great statues of the apostles which line its walls. These were made by sculptors of the late Baroque period in the beginning of 1700. Once again, we see Peter holding the keys in his hand.